Hi, I'm Matt Gordon with Rockridge Media, and I'm really excited to share this video with you today. It's the best marketing books you've probably never read. Not that we all need more to read or more to do in our lives, but I did want to share this list with you of books that I consider, and a lot of people consider, classics in the marketing field, but they have sort of been lost to the sands of time, so to speak. So they're not the latest and greatest books generally by any stretch, but books that are foundational to my understanding of marketing, and I think you're going to get a lot out of them as well. The first book is Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Dr. Robert Cialdini. You know, I tell people all the time that marketing is 60% applied psychology, and this book is a perfect example of that. Dr. Cialdini is a professor of psychology from Arizona State University. And in this book, he identifies 6 principles that you and I see just about every day in some form or fashion, and how they are used to manipulate people. Now, when you hear that this book is written by a professor, you think it's probably going to be, very academic with all sorts of experiments and studies. And the good news is that's not at all the case. He actually does a really good job at explaining these principles and showing how that they're used in everyday situations. So if you want to get a book on how to get people to do what you want them to do in your advertising, marketing, or sales efforts, this book is where you start. So the next book is the newest book, and all the recommendations that I have for you in this video was written in 2011, and it's called Pitch Anything, an innovative method for presenting, persuading, and winning the deal. It's written by a guy named Oren Clef. And he's the guy that you want to hire when your company is seeking big investment dollars. So when you're looking to raise 50, 70, $100 million or whatever from venture capitalists, this is the guy that you want to fly in on a private jet, and he will convince people to invest in your business. So I think it's sales at the highest level. And what's cool about this book is that he really takes you into how to arrange your pitch in a way that can be best absorbed and acted upon by the brain. And the same principles that work for a multi-million-dollar investor pitch will also work in your sales and marketing. So, really good book. I've got a number of absolute classics on this list, and the first one is Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins. So, it's old, for sure. It was written in 1923, and it kind of feels like it. But whatever you do, don't let that throw you. David Ogilvy, and we'll get to him in a minute, Ogilvy was reputed to have said that everyone in marketing should read this book 7 times. And fortunately, if you're going to read it that many times, it's going to need to be clear and concise, and it is. And it's also pretty short. I think it's only about 90 pages long, and every word has a good reason for being there. So I think it's one of the best foundational marketing educations you're ever going to get in your life. You should definitely read Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins. And the best way to follow a classic is with another one. So that's where I have not really ranked, but placed Breakthrough Advertising by a guy named Eugene Schwartz. This book was written in 1966, so it is a little newer. And it's reputedly, this is interesting, it's reputedly the most stolen book from the New York City public library system. And it's not so much a book you read, it's a book you study. And that is if you can actually get your hands on a copy. If you find a used copy, you can expect to spend at least a few $100s for it, if you can find one at all. But if you can find one, it's worth every penny. Next up is The Boron Letters by Gary Halbert. This is an interesting book. It was actually written as a series of letters from Gary Halbert to his son, who was, I think, 15 or 16 at the time. And I don't think I'm spoiling anything to tell you that the man was writing letters to his son from prison. He spent 10 months there in the Boron federal prison camp for a crime that he says never really happened. Kind of a long, confusing stories, and he had bad lawyers and all that. But don't let any of that dissuade you from the wisdom in this book. It's really a book about marketing and a book about life. And he called this experience when he was in this Club Fed, as he calls it, one of the most valuable experiences, actually the most valuable experience he ever had. and he's one of the most influential figures in copywriting and direct marketing that has ever lived. So definitely someone worth paying attention to. Now, another titan in the field is Robert Collier, and this book is a series of sales letters written by, well, Robert Collier. It's really a marketing course that's backed up by a collection of marketing letters that you should study. Old stuff, to be sure, and it kind of reads like it, but you've got to recognize that the principles of human behavior, and I'm always saying this, they don't change. They've been the same forever, and I don't see any changes coming down the pike in our lifetime, certainly. So you should study these letters, and when you do, you're going to start to notice patterns, and you're going to start to notice principles, and you're going to be spotting them not only in those letters, but also in modern advertising, and you're going to be learning how to put these principles at play in your marketing. Definitely worth picking up the Robert Collier letter book. Now, speaking of titans in the advertising industry, John Caples is another absolute legend. As a matter of fact, they named an award after him. He's since passed away, but I think that they still give out the award every year. It's called the Caples Award. And if you've studied any old marketing at all, or if you've seen any marketing at all from back in the old days, you've probably seen some of his work. John Caples was the man who wrote what some people call the most perfect headline ever written. It was for a music instruction course, and here's what he wrote. They laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play, and then, ellipsis, ... exclamation point. Well, they sold a ton of piano lessons on the strength of just that headline. And one of the things I like about Caples is he's really good at teaching you how to play to people's emotions. And in today's, super busy, overcrowded, frankly, over-advertised environment, that is a critical skill. So, Tested Advertising Methods by John Caples. Okay, I'm going to get back into a little bit more of a modern book. This was originally published in 1993. It's a series of basic marketing principles that will apply in a lot of different situations. It's called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, and it's written by Al Ries and Jack Trout. It's quicker and easier to read than a lot of the titles I've put on this list, and it definitely belongs on every marketer's bookshelf. What's good about it is you can pick it up for a few minutes, read one or two of the principles, and then move on to other things. It's a really good read. So moving on, you can't really put out a list of foundational marketing books without at least mentioning Jay Abraham. He's a classic, modern leader in marketing and business, and a trusted advisor to many people. And this book, I think, is probably the best for the small business owner. It's about uncovering hidden opportunities in your business and getting the most out of them. It's a surprisingly good book that can really help you, as the title says, get everything you can out of all you've got. So we're heading into the final couple of recommendations here. If you've never heard of David Ogilvy, you are really in for a treat. If you remember the show Mad Men on AMC, David Ogilvy was basically the real Don Draper. Now, not so much for his personal flaws and the way he lived his life, but for his professional performance, definitely. And he did come up with some of the most iconic ad campaigns of all time. So, American Express, Don't Leave Home Without It. Well, that was him. The World's Most Interesting Man from the beer commercials. Ogilvy came up with the original idea for a dress shirt decades ago, and then Dos Equis just copied him. So this book is practically the user's manual on advertising. And it's got tons and tons of examples in it and some very, very practical, actionable advice. You've got to pick up this book. And if you're impressed by David Ogilvy, and I've no doubt you will be, I've got a couple of more recommendations here, sort of bonuses. The first is Confessions of an Advertising Man. So if you remember when I mentioned Mad Men a little earlier, in the series, Roger Sterling buys this book in season 3, and he's talking about it. I think David Ogilvy is mentioned in a couple of other seasons as well. So this book is kind of a memoir, but it's still got a lot of great lessons in it, particularly if you work in marketing or advertising. Now, the final book also sort of plays on the David Ogilvy theme, and it's probably the best biography out there of the guy. It's written by Kenneth Roman, and Roman is the former CEO of the advertising firm Ogilvy and Mather. So he's a pretty good guy to write the biography. It's a pretty fun read, and if you get kind of bitten by the bug of wanting to learn more about David Ogilvy, you'll probably want to pick it up. So that's my list of some of the best marketing books you've probably never read. Thank you so much for watching. I'm glad you did, and even more so, I really hope that you found a book or two that you'd like to pick up and learn from. That would just thrill me. If there are comments below and you'd like to add to the list, maybe you think there's a book on there that shouldn't be on there, I'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching.